Hi, guys. All right, so this is our lecture for week 2, which is storyboarding. Storyboarding is the act of taking a story, usually that you have written out, or maybe it's just in your head, and creating a series of images to go along with that story. You can do it with a drawing, or with photos, or with a drawing app like we'll be using in class this week. But it's just taking something that's just a story and making it visual. And that's totally different from writing. This is like how to show a series of images that will completely explain your story. Anyway, so we're talking about storytelling and story structure. So the way that stories are put together in many instances. All right, I'm going to share my screen and just start the lecture. All right, so digital storytelling is using accessible digital media tools to craft audiovisual narratives. Right. So according to Wikipedia, storytelling describes the social and cultural activity of sharing stories, sometimes with improvisation, theatrics, or embellishment. Every culture has its own stories or narratives which are shared as a means of entertainment, education, cultural preservation, or instilling moral values. So the story part, we all understand that, but the storytelling is really important. It's throughout human history, it's a way of sharing experiences, sharing like a series of events in your life with other people. So it's not just about the content of the story, it's about the experience of sharing it with people that may relate to it. So some definitions within storytelling that are very important. A narrative or story is a report of connected events, real or imaginary, presented in a sequence of written or spoken words, or still or moving images, or both. Plot refers to the sequence of events inside a story which affect other events through the principle of cause and effect. The causal events of a plot can be thought of as a series of sentences linked by and so. A character is a person or other being in a narrative, such as a novel, play, television series, film, or video game. So character really jumps out to me as a key element here. And that might seem self-explanatory, but it's actually hard to develop characters within a story. It can be easy to accidentally tell a story that has a very vague or undefined characters. And a character is so important to build a story around. It's like the person that you see the story through their eyes and you relate to them. It's like a way of having a story be very engaging is a clear sense of characters. Evidence strongly suggests that humans in all cultures come to cast their own identity in some sort of narrative form. We are inveterate storytellers. That's Owen Flanagan in Consciousness Reconsidered, a professor of philosophy and neurobiology at Duke University. So cast their own identity, what an interesting phrase. And I think that relates back to characters, that most stories are engaging because of the human element. You can relate to the storyteller or to the main characters in the story. Okay, what do stories have in common? Is there a structure we can use to tell engaging stories? What's the difference between story and plot? Alrighty, so story structure, it's like a way of building stories that many storytellers and writers and story creators use, and they're used over and over again. All right, so a very key element here is the difference between plot and story, because they're actually slightly different. So a plot is the series of events providing conflict within a story. It's the spine of the story. The action, the things that take place, it makes up the plot. Where a story is the emotions associated with the series of events in the plot. Your character's emotional reactions to plot events. Your character's emotional journey starting in one place and ending in another. So the story, if the plot is what happens, the story is like what it's really about. Why are we telling this story? Is all in like this story. Okay. So a plot, and I'm going to give you an example of a made-up film that I just thought of myself. Okay. So the plot of this film is Joe searches for a murderer and finds him. The murderer is arrested. That's just what happens. So the story is Joe is always working and doesn't appreciate his family. Then his wife is murdered, and now he and his son search for the murderer together. They find him. Joe gets closure for his wife's death. Bobby gets to know the dad that he never saw before, and Joe learns to appreciate and hold his family closer than ever. So the plot, it's a classic murder story, but the story, what it's really about, is a man's journey to appreciate the people around him, appreciate his family, and this one family's sort of healing through a traumatic event. And if you notice, I talked about before emotional journey. So he started in one place and ended in another because of the events in the plot. He used to be selfish and constantly working, and then he ended up embracing his family and having a totally different sense of himself and his family. So that's kind of like something to think about. You may structure your plot, but if it has no engaging emotional effect on your characters, it may actually be a very like boring or cold story. Okay, so story structure. There's two structures I really want to talk about that are very common. You probably have noticed them in all kinds of media. So reality TV, sitcoms, dramas, movies, all kinds of things use a 3-act structure and a story circle. They're two kind of alternative ways of thinking of the way stories are put together. Okay, so I wanted to give you an example of a book that I wrote, a story that I wrote called Geraldine, which is my first picture book. I'm going to share the PDF of it with you, and I'll read it, and then as we go through these different story structure definitions, I'll talk about it in the context of Geraldine and seeing those structures kind of come to life. All right, so here is the PDF, and I'm just going to start reading. It doesn't take very long. All right, here's the front end paper, The Giraffe World. Geraldine by Elizabeth Lilly. I'm moving. This is the worst thing ever. Geraldine, what did I tell you about being a drama queen, says Mom. Just think of it as a grand adventure, says Dad. No, I say. No, 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 no. No. On Monday morning, Mom goes to her new job. Dad walks me to school. I learned 2 things before school even starts. 1, I'm definitely the only giraffe in this school. And 2, flags make very good handkerchiefs. In Giraffe City, I felt like Geraldine, but here, I just feel like that giraffe girl. I'm going to move the camera over to my other screen for reading. But here, I just feel like that giraffe girl. I'm shy, which I never was before. It turns out when you're my height, hiding is not easy. Even my voice tries to hide. It's gotten quiet and whispery. One day, someone is in my lunch hiding spot, and I notice her food is organized like this. Who are you? I ask. I bet you've heard of me, she says, and she sounds kind of mad. I'm that girl who wears glasses and likes math and always organizes her food. No, I meant your name, I say. Oh, she says, it's Cassie. We decide to hide together. You know, Cassie, I say one day, you're not just some girl who does unusual stuff. You're Cassie. You make up fantabulous games. You're nice. You can do a handstand for 167 seconds. I think you're really great. You know, she says to me kind of quiet, you are not just a giraffe. You're Geraldine. You dance like crazy. You pretend so well. One time I thought you were the Queen of England. You're the one and only Geraldine, and I think you're really great too. I think about this and my head stands up a little taller. The next day, I drag Cassie to the lunch table. We're really great, remember? I tell her. She does not seem to remember. This is Cassie, I say really loud so my voice will stop hiding. Cassie can stay in a handstand for 167 seconds. Really, says Melinda Bucket, and I can tell she's very impressed. And this is Geraldine, says Cassie nice and loud. She's not letting her voice hide either. Then Cassie says, Geraldine is the Queen of England. Everyone looks at me. Oh, no. Oh, no, 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 no. Why, of course I am, darling, I finally say, with my most queenly royal wave. And everyone laughs in a good way. Me and Cassie and Melinda Bucket and everyone all laughed together for the rest of lunch that day and the next day and the next. Little by little, I think everyone forgets that I was that giraffe girl, including me. Now Cassie and I still hide, but only when we're playing hide and seek. It's still hard to fit into things. In the school play, I'm tree number 2. And when we go camping, I get a lot of fresh air. People still look at me funny sometimes, and sometimes I just want to hide or go home or cry. But almost all the time, I know that I'm more than a giraffe. I'm the one and only Geraldine, and I'm really great. The end. Here's the final end paper. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my slideshow. All right. So keep that story in mind, and I'll talk about the first of our 2 structures, which is the 3-act structure. So the setup in Act 1 is where all the main characters and their basic situations are introduced, and it has a primary level of characterization with the characters' backgrounds and personalities, and a problem is introduced, which is what starts the story. The second act is the conflict. The bulk of the story, the inciting incident sets things into motion, and then this is the part of the story where the characters go through major changes as a result of that inciting incident. And this can be referred to as the character arc or character development, usually happens in the middle. Third act or resolution is when the problem in the story boils over, forcing the characters to confront it and allowing all the elements of the story to come together and inevitably lead to the ending. All right, so beginning, middle, and end. Plot starts here, rises, and falls. So there's an inciting incident, contrasts and changes in the middle, and challenges, and the resolutions at the end. All right, here is a plot diagram associated with the 3-act structure. You may have seen something kind of similar to this in English classes or in writing classes before. And I'm going to just break this down in terms of Geraldine, which we just read. Okay, so Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. And this is the time, and this axis is the tension. So low tension at the beginning, high tension, then it wraps up. Okay, so the setup, and then there's the inciting incident. The setup in Geraldine is kind of done wordlessly at the beginning through the, the end paper where you see Giraffe World. And let me pull that up. All right, so here it is. Go back up to the top. This is the setup. There's a giraffe world. There's birds delivering packages. There's giraffes on the street. There's giraffes driving cars. And then this scene, when this giraffe, Geraldine, comes home, you see her talking to a bigger giraffe in a home filled with birds. We don't really know why yet, but the setup is happening. And then here's the inciting incident. I'm moving. It is the worst thing ever. So we go right into the actions. The problem is set up. And you see her emotional kind of reaction to that all along. All right, so the plot is happening, they're moving, and the story is happening. The emotional impact is happening at the same time. Okay, so let's go back to the slides. All right, let me just zoom in on this. Okay, so Act 1, in which we embark on an adventure. Inciting incident, plot point 1 is when they move and she starts to go to school. The midpoint, here they call it shits and giggles. Things just start happening. A roller coaster or a snowball effect when things just happen one after the other after the other. So plot point 1 in the book is really when the setup is over, the problem is clearly established. Think of it as a grand adventure. No, she doesn't want to, resisting that problem. And then on Monday morning, mom goes to her new job, dad walks me to school. And the only giraffe in the school and flags make very good handkerchiefs. So this is the real big first plot point development. She learns she's the only giraffe. So not only is she in a new school, she's the only giraffe at that school. So this is a plot point 1 that makes the tension go up and up and up. So go back to the book. Flags make very good handkerchiefs, so she's crying, right? In Giraffe City, I felt like Geraldine, but here I just feel like that giraffe girl. So these are all comic panels talking about what she was like in Giraffe City when she was home. So she and her giraffe friends swim with fish. They play like a little game. They stand around in the trees together. They have a special school bus. And in the new school, she's laying on 5 yoga mats because they're too small for her. She can't participate in the handprint turkey day for Thanksgiving. She can't fit in the jump ropes. She can't fit in the school bus. She's as tall as the diving board. She can't fit clothes in regular storage along with her classmates. So it's this rising tension over time of things happening in this second act as a result of the problem and the things that are happening in the first plot point. All right, so things are happening, it's getting worse, she's shy, she's hiding. And then, let's go back to the slideshow. Plot point 2, we find that there is a girl in her hiding spot. So another turning point. She meets someone that's similar to her, Cassie, who's also an outsider, also different. And there might be something changing here, right? So that's, if we go back to the slideshow, here, plot point 2, and it's still rising, but it's sort of starting to level off. Then they're bonding, they think they're really great. And then there's a crisis, which is when Geraldine, sort of on a whim, decides to confront the rest of the kids and confront the problem of feeling alone head on by kind of trying to integrate with the kids that she feels so different from. So let's see. All right, so then rising gets to the crisis, which is here. They're talking to the girls in the lunch table, and the crisis doesn't have to be like the end of the world, like the train track is about to hit someone. Like that's a classic story word for like life or death, but it absolutely doesn't have to be that typical level of drama. Like a crisis can be anything depending on the character and the context and what that one individual character feels like is a crisis. So like if you remember an embarrassing story from when you're a kid, maybe you went to school and everyone was supposed to bring in cookies and other people brought in the best cookies, delicious fancy cookies, and you didn't bring any cookies because you forgot, and you just put Cheetos from the vending machine on the table, and it was embarrassing. That's a crisis to you, right? As a 7-year-old, that's an absolute crisis because you still remember it. It's not life or death, but in that context, it could be the climax of a story. It could be the thing that things are building up to. So anything can be any of these things, depending on the character and what matters to them. Okay, so that's sort of a tangent, but so we get to the climax when Kathy says, Geraldine is the Queen of England. Everyone looks at me. Oh no, no. So that is the boiling point of kind of putting it to the test. Can I feel good about myself? Can I feel like I belong in this place? And then she does by using her personality, her drama, her performance. When she says, of course I am, darling, I finally say with my most cleanly royal wave, everyone laughs in a good way. So she's finding that she fits in through her humor and using the things that set her apart to bring people together. So crisis, and there's a climax, and there's a wrap up, which is falling tension. So there's less of this difficulty. Says always lost, beat the big boss, save the day. So Geraldine kind of saves the day by figuring out how to live now. I think that's a very important and sometimes underestimated or undervalued part of storytelling is the wrap up. You want this satisfying feeling of not only did things turn out okay at the climax, but life is better now, or it's different now in a way that I can live with. So if we go back to Geraldine, everyone forgets I was at Draft Girl, including me. Has been his job, but only when we're playing hide and seek. So it's not only a wrap up of this kind of external story, fitting in or hanging out with other people and not being alone, but this internal story within Geraldine of doubting who she is and her own value. She thought she was that draft girl, so just a weirdo or just a draft. But she's not. She's an individual with a personality and things to offer that are important. So this kind of like self-doubt. Other people doubting her is a different problem, but her self-doubt also kind of got to be resolved. Still hard to fit into things. Go play entry number 2. Go camping, get a lot of fresh air. All the time I know that I'm more than just a draft. The one and only Geraldine, I'm really great. So there's this like wrap up, a little bit of kind of like things are still hard, but then this wrap up again. So it's this sort of like satisfying feeling of things being okay, bearable, and ending on a note of like hope. And then this final end paper is the kind of things are changed now. So this emotional journey, I'm different now. I live in a world where people do support and accept me. These neighbors are painting their houses like giraffes, and I'm different after going through all these events. All right, let's go back to, so this is the 3-act structure and the plot diagram. Okay, so let's talk about a different one, which is the story circle. All right, so if this was like, a peak, this other model is a story circle. So let me zoom out a little. A little bit more. Right. So this particular version of the story circle is called the hero's journey. It's a common template of a broad category of tales where a hero goes on an adventure. In a decisive crisis, he or she wins a victory, and then comes home changed or transformed. So you see this all the time, especially in like superhero movies, in myths, fairy tales, kind of like these epic tales, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, all kinds of things. Okay, so start here at the top. It's like that clock, like 12 all the way back. Okay, so call to adventure. You're in the known. You journey from the known to the unknown usually. So you're at home comfortable, and then something calls you to go out into the world to achieve or gain something. All right, supernatural aid. So there's like references to supernatural and like divine beings in this version, which certainly may or may not be present. So okay, threshold or guardian. So the call to adventure, you get help usually from somewhere. Then there's a threshold beginning of the transformation. There are challenges and temptations. Then there's a revelation. So the abyss, death, and rebirth. So what this kind of refers to is that climax. So you start, you know, you need to go out to some place for a particular reason. Threshold is the beginning of the transformation. So it's when you enter this unknown world and things start to change you because of the difficulties you're going through. All right. And then there are challenges and temptations, and there's a revelation. So the climactic event happens to you. You're facing the worst of what you're going through in this unknown territory. And then sometimes there's death and rebirth. So in some, like Lord of the Rings, I think in other ones, it's literally death and rebirth, but this may be just a dramatic change in yourself that happens at this climax. Then there's transformation, atonement, and return to home. So you're going through this unknown stage and then returning to home, they're changed or different. So sometimes the hero is usually transformed or changed. Sometimes it's atonement meaning like you're sorry for something, or there's an emotional change that's very dramatic. So this is just a little bit about the history of this. Joseph Campbell studied myths and common myth structures and wrote a book that's still commonly studied by writers and filmmakers called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And it's a sort of basic narrative pattern. And he was influenced by psychologist Carl Jung's view of myths as universal. And they proposed that the similarities emerge from an area of the mind called the collective unconscious. Okay, so this is just a circle going from home, a comfortable state, to and like a known world, to the unknown, and then coming back. All right. So a simplified story circle, it was created by Dan Harmon, who is the TV writer of this TV show Community. And this is also commonly studied in writing and filmmaking. So it's an adaptation of those 17 stages that is now in 8 stages, and it's a little more applicable to most stories that are not sort of divine and having supernatural elements. All right. So first, the character is in a comfort zone, right? The sort of background. Then there's a need or a desire. They need to do something. They need to get something, achieve something, or they desire to do that. Then they are in an unfamiliar situation because of that need. Then they have to adapt to it. And they get what they wanted, but they pay a price. Then they return to the comfort zone, having changed in some way. So let's look at Geraldine in this context. So first, there's a comfort zone, right? She is in Giraffe World, having a good old time, living in her normal life. Then a need or desire. They're moving. So in this case, it just sort of happens to her. She didn't need or want to move, but she didn't really desire to move, but she needs to move because it's what's happening. She's in an unfamiliar situation. She's in this new town, in this new school where she's the only giraffe. She has to adapt to it, right? She has to try to be okay in this new environment. So let me pull up the book again. We'll go through this. All right, comfort zone here at home in Giraffe World. Need or desire, I'm moving. Not adapting very well, right? Adapting. So she's adapting to her new environment, right? Not adapting very well. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. All right. So they get what they wanted. This is the next step of the story circle. In this case, Geraldine does get what she wants. She makes a friend. So I would say that in this phase, she gets what she wants in terms of a feeling of belonging, right? And not feeling so alone. And even here, she gets what she wants by engaging with the school, the other children, and not feeling like such an outsider. Go back to the, but pay a price. So I would say that the price that Geraldine pays here is that she doesn't completely feel like she's the same as everyone else. She still is bigger than other kids. She's still awkward because she will always be a giraffe. But the last stage of that is the last two stages, return to comfort, having changed. So she returns to belonging and feeling at home, but she's changed in that she the last page especially, almost all the time, I know I'm more than a giraffe. I'm the one and only Geraldine, and I'm really great. So the way that she's changed is that she's more sure of herself. She has a greater sense of who she is and the fact that her worth is not in her physical format, but in herself, her personality, her talents. And that's the way that she's changed. So in this way, where the 3-act structure is more plot based, I think a story circle is more story based in that it's really centered on the character, the main character, and the way they view the world and their emotional change and journey. Okay, and as you go into, so thanks for listening to me talking about Geraldine and kind of these different structures. As you go into working on your storyboard for this week with Aesop's Fable, remember to think flexibly. You may have to consider elements creatively and openly to fit this paradigm. So you may want to use the 3-act plot diagram. You may want to use a story circle. You may want to combine them. Or you may want to use one but only use part of it. So try to be open and not too rigid with the way you apply this. All right, thanks. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.